Finally, we have located one Audie Attar, one of the top managers in the sport. He is the manager for a who's who, of course, none bigger than Conor McGregor, but his stable is second to none, and he has finally obliged. He is finally here. He has finally squeezed us in. He has finally granted us a few minutes of his precious time. He's on the phone right now. Audie, are you there?
Hey, yes. Stop tooting my horn, Ariel. You're making me blush.
It has been a while. How long have I been trying to get you on this show? Over a year.
Has it been over a year?
It has.
I've been on it a lot sooner. Time flies. But always appreciate the interest and never stiff-arming you. If I do, it's kind of like muscle memory. It just happens naturally.
Sure. Of course, in a previous life, you were a great football player, so I know that comes natural to you. But now you are making deals. You are a deal maker. And so let's start at the top here. I would be remiss if I don't start here. Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, it's what everyone's talking about. Where do we stand on April 24th, 2017?
Hey, listen, I think there's fan interest. I think, that's kind of what's brought us to a point where this thing possibly may happen, but we'll see. I think, nothing's set in stone, and I think it's one of those things where it's a work in progress, but it's definitely trending in the right direction.
How did we get, Audie, in a very short amount of time? Because, back in the day, it was like, oh, it took Manny, and Floyd 4 years to get it done. In essentially 5 months from MSG till now, how did we get from this being like a crazy pipe dream to now Dana White actually openly talking about 75 million, 100 million? How did it progress this quickly?
I mean, I think, first and foremost, it's just the fan interest. I mean, Floyd and Conor organically just going back and forth, and that just kind of picked up the fan interest. And credit to Dana and the UFC for recognizing a huge opportunity and wanting to be involved. And so I think that's really I would say the evolution of this whole thing. And in today's age, where social media and media pick up on storylines and banter. That's also, people could quantify and measure the actual viability of something like this from a business standpoint. So, I think it's just, it's all happened organically, which is good.
When did it seriously become a thing? Like, when did you start to believe that this actually had a chance in happening?
I mean, to be honest with you, we still don't know. It's not happened yet. So
but we're certainly a lot further along, right? I mean,
question to answer. But you got to believe and think and dream about anything you want to do. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all dreams come true. So I think that's as it relates to that, it's not done.
Okay.
So that's a premature question to answer.
Fair enough. Let's say we were playing on a football field, your former home, and you have to go from the zero yard line to the other side of the field, the end zone. What point are we talking about as far as where we are in the negotiations? Are we on the 50-yard line, 60, 70? Are we in the red zone? Are we on the goal line?
Listen, I really don't know, and because there's so many different moving parts and stakeholders, I don't know. You could theorize and say 50-yard line, what have you, but it's just, I think at this point, it's just again too premature. Until the ink dries, and even beyond that, the fight happens. Still don't know, but nonetheless, it's still all trending in the right direction.
Is it a good bet that this will be his next fight?
I don't know. I'm not a betting man.
He seems, everyone's his whole team talks about it like it's a foregone conclusion. He's talking about it himself. I know you don't want to put the cart before the horse, but it does certainly feel like an announcement is imminent.
I could tell you that, Conor's the type of athlete and individual, when he focuses on something, he works towards it, and a lot of his focus and visions end up becoming a reality. And I think that's something that he's always subscribed to in his career. So, I think it's all trending in the right direction.
The latest we heard from the UFC was 100 million for Floyd, 75 for Conor. How do you feel about that?
I think it's all trending in the right direction, But at the end of the day, when you talk about those types of unprecedented numbers in our sport, you feel good about it. So I think it's just one of those things. Now you just have to wait to see if it becomes a reality.
One thing I and others have brought up is, how is Conor, let's say this fight happens and let's say he makes over 100 million. How is he going to go from that to, what he was making before in MMA? It's going to be tough. Is this a situation where
we haven't even gotten to that thought, because we haven't even gotten to the other premature thoughts. So we have to essentially go through things and can't get ahead of ourselves thinking about things that don't even exist right now. So I understand that the fans and the media speculate about things like that, but it'd be very unprofessional of us for even thinking about something that's not there.
Right.
Why not focus on things that have a chance of really becoming a reality, as opposed to theorizing on other things that are not even before us right now?
Let me ask you this. Conor has 4 fights left on his UFC deal, right?
Conor is still under contract with the UFC.
Would this
That's
fight...
all I can answer about that. I can't go into detail.
Would this fight count as a UFC fight, or is it a kind of like a special thing?
That stuff, again, whatever as it relates to anything that we discuss, I can't share. But I don't fault you for trying, Ariel. That's why you're at the top of the.
You were just about to say you are the best, and then you went back for a second. I felt the B, and then you went back. Why? It was there. I was going to say thank you, and then you went back.
You said, listen, let me tell you, you said I was one of the best managers. So
Okay.
I'm just reciprocating here.
Fair enough. Do you have a deadline? Do you guys have a deadline? Like, if this doesn't happen by X amount of time, we have to move on?
No, why would we do that to ourselves? Cut our nose in spite of ourselves, right? So just work.
Sure.
That's all we approach everything. Keep working.
When I spoke to Conor in January, he said that he envisioned this happening end of the year, early next year. But since then, there's been some talk of September that has been brought up. What is realistic in your opinion?
So, look, I'm not a betting man, as I just told you, but if you were to look at Mystic Mac's track record, what would you say? That's what I would tell you.
Okay.
That's what I would tell you.
He hasn't had the baby yet, right?
No.
Do you sense that he is going to want to take a long break after? I mean, he's taking a break now. I know he's still training and things like that, but do you sense that he's going to take a long break, or, everything goes well and then I'll get back to work?
He's back training now. He's enjoyed himself. He's had, his sister got married. He's had obviously some friends about to get married, bachelor parties, etc. So, he's obviously enjoyed some time off. Yeah. With friends and family, but he's back training already. And I think he's really excited to bring his son into this world. He's really, really just kind of enjoying the journey, so to speak. And when that happens, he's going to enjoy it and ensure that he's present. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to take anything away from his training, because that's something that he loves. He's passionate about. And I guess define time off. I don't think he's going to take any time off. He's already training.
The main thing that people brought up was too many cooks in this kitchen. You have to get the Mayweather side on board, the UFC side on board. You guys have to be on board. What TV network is going to produce all this stuff? Thus far, I know you can't go into details, but has it been relatively smooth sailing, or has it been one of the tougher? I mean, you're trying to do something that's unprecedented, right? This has never been done before. Major boxing guy against a major MMA guy, and not just major boxing MMA. We're talking about the 2 biggest combat sports stars on planet Earth, and there's a lot of egos involved. How would you describe this experience from a managerial standpoint, navigating those waters?
Well, I would tell you that don't always believe everything you read, and anything that's great in life and business, there's always going to have some challenges and complications. But nonetheless, I think if you work, keep your head down, and don't bitch and moan about how tough something is, you don't really focus on that negative energy. And so I haven't, and everything has been organic, as I said, and nothing's done yet. So we'll see how it all plays out. And if it happens, obviously it'll be an amazing thing for all parties involved.
Are you guys big on this whole A side, B side thing? It's a very boxing-like discussion, but it keeps coming up. Does this matter to you?
No, not really. I mean, numbers don't lie.
Right.
Obviously, I think we know the relevance in today's market, but nonetheless, I think you got to give credit where credit's due. But ultimately, too, it's a competition. And if it does happen, then see who the true A side is, right?
Yeah.
We don't focus on all that.
I have to ask, what's it like talking to the Mayweather people? Do you deal with that, or is that the UFC and you go with the UFC and the UFC, like Heyman and Ellerby, these characters that we hear so much about? What's that like?
No, listen, we're dealing with the UFC.
Okay.
And you know, that's the extent of that situation. So, I know I left you cliffhanger with that, but that's all I had to say.
Oh, okay. I was waiting. Do you think this breaks Pacquiao Mayweather as far as pay-per-view is concerned?
You hope it does, right? If it happens, you hope it does. I think it has every bit of the ingredients needed to do so. But again, it has to happen first, and then we'll see.
How do you, I've never asked you this, how do you feel about Conor no longer being the featherweight champion? Do you understand why the UFC did what it did?
I don't necessarily see it that way. I see him being the featherweight and lightweight champion, and you know, I think just someone has to beat him in order to really claim that from him, in my opinion. But I understand what the UFC did, and they had to do what's in their best interest, and it is what it is.
So do you foresee him at some point actually going back down to 145?
I foresee him definitely challenging himself. So I think that, you know, in the future, you see how this Aldo Holloway fight plays out. You know, obviously, I think there's other matchups in the 155 division. I mean, there's so the rematches are always interesting, right? Mm-hmm. But we'll see. I mean, for him, I think he goes by whatever he wants to challenge himself with. So, and every fighter is different. Every fighter, you know, is doing something with regards to their career that helps them achieve their goals, whether it's from a challenge or it's from a monetary standpoint. So, I think it's definitely plausible. You know, it just depends. And again, you can't necessarily theorize about stuff that's not right before you. You know.
Is that part of the reason why we're going down this road, because nothing really is tickling his fancy as far as MMA is concerned?
I mean, look, I think you just said it. Dana said it. There's 75 million reasons why this makes sense, and it's also a challenge from an athletic standpoint, going up the guy that's 49-0, and the fact that now this is it went from banter, Floyd, essentially kicking off some banter to serious stakeholders having serious conversations. So, I think that's the main reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at the numbers, that if it surpasses Floyd, then it's good business for everybody.
Has the UFC at any point tried to entice you guys with another fight, another opportunity within the UFC world? Say, hey, let's just not go down this road. We have this big fight on this state.
I love you to death, Ariel, but I'm not going to comment on anything else as it relates to any conversations to UFC.
Okay, fair enough. Let's pivot here for a second. Like I said, you have quite the stable. Two members of that stable are Gunnar Nelson and Wonderboy Thompson. John Kavanagh, who is Gunnar Nelson's head coach, as you know, has been asking for the Wonderboy fight. Wonderboy seemed a little lukewarm when I spoke to him about it. Is this a possibility? Or as a manager, I know you're trying to do what's best for your guys. Do you like to move away from having your two clients fight each other?
I think as it relates to Gunny, Gunnar, Holly, his father, John Kavanagh, they've all voiced the interest of fighting Wonderboy. They wanted to try to do something this summer. I know Wonderboy is going to be out until the fall, so that answers that question for that team. As it relates to Wonderboy, he wants to make sure he's healthy and not rush when he comes back. So he's actually 100%. So he started to train, but he just wants to make sure he's ready completely. And he's had his eyes set on a few guys that are now matched up, but nonetheless, there's still a level of interest from some discussions that have taken place. So that doesn't necessarily match up right now from a timing standpoint. As it relates to my own opinion of clients fighting, this is not the streets or war. This is a professional sport. All these guys are really good people that are doing it for the same reasons, which is because they're passionate about the sport and they want to provide for their families. My job from the business standpoint is to make sure that they are maximizing their careers professionally. Do I like when I see clients that are about to fight? No, it's not necessarily something on a human level you want to see, but you remove the emotion. It's business, it's competition, and that's what it is. At the end of it, there's a huge respect from one another, although there's probably a lot of build-up and banter leading up to a fight. You know, it wouldn't be the first time or the last time that clients potentially will fight one another. You know, and as I've said this before, I probably won't go to those events. I'll probably watch it from home because at the end of the day, there's still an emotional investment that you make in all your clients, and there's a respect. You know, you don't work with people that you don't respect. And so with that being said, you know, I think, again, it's Wonder Boy and Gunny are two of the top welterweights in the division. And, you know, I can understand why Gunny wants to go for Wonder Boy, and I understand why Wonder Boy has his eyes set on specific individuals that he's interested in matching up with. But time will tell, and we'll see kind of how that all shakes out.
So that hasn't been offered yet to either guy?
No.
Okay. We had Chris Weidman on earlier, and he actually teased your interview because I asked him about an update on the appeal. He said you would know more. Do you have an update? He said he might have gotten a response today, but wasn't sure.
So we filed the appeal and got an acknowledgement of the receipt of the appeal. The statute doesn't set out for any specific time frame when they have to respond. I know that I've had my team reach back out today just to touch base and kind of see when we should expect the response. We haven't got one. I mean, that whole situation was just unfortunate, and it's actually laughable. You know, you look at New York. Yes, it was, let's call it the last state of the MMA union, so to speak, that became legalized. But, you know, they have such a rich history with combat sports that when something like this happens, it's just really unfortunate, and it leaves them with a stain, so to speak, because, you know, there's no replays in that state. And I was there front row at that fight in Buffalo. And the way it all went down was just really unfortunate and unfair to Chris because he was fighting such a good fight. And then for it to now, the fight to be stopped for what the ref called in live action as a illegal knee, given 5 minutes, and all these different back and forths out of the octagon, looking at replays, changing his position, medical team thinking he's not fit to continue. And then essentially what would have been a no contest then changed to TKO stoppage. That wasn't the right call at all. And you know, it's one of those things where I hope the New York State Athletic Commission really looks at the findings and the appeal that we file to see that there's strong merit for overturning this from a TKO stoppage and a loss on Chris's record to no contest. And Chris is in the, you know, mindset like, F it, I don't care. Whatever comes, I'm going to go. But he wants that rematch. That's what he wants. You know, and I think that if you look at Mousasi, I mean, he was acting appropriately because he wasn't celebrating that victory because he knew it wasn't right, you know, and he was shushing his corners to stop celebrating. He was pulling the flag down when they were trying to put it over him while they were celebrating. And he just, you know, you could see that he knew that was not the right decision and he should not celebrate a victory like that when, quite frankly, Chris was winning the fight. So they got to run it back. And I'm hearing rumblings that he's close to inking his you know, a new deal with the UFC. I don't know how true it is, but obviously that's just stuff that you hear.
Okay.
And hopefully he does come to terms and he's back in the UFC. And if he is, I think that'd be a great one to kind of run back and shoot, you know, International Fight Week or something. You know what I mean? Like if he inks the deal soon, that'd be perfect for the summertime, you know? And he said publicly that he'd give Chris that rematch. So hopefully, you know, he stands by his word. You know, hopefully the New York State Athletic Commission comes back and does the right thing, and then the fans will be treated to a great rematch between those two.
And I'm just kind of going rapid fire here on your guys because you have so many big names, as I said. Jimmy Manuwa was, I thought, doing a great job of campaigning for that title fight. I reported late last week that it's all but done, that they're going to do DC versus Jones 2 in Anaheim, July 29th. If that comes to fruition, as we expect it to, barring any unforeseen roadblocks, what do you do with Jimmy?
Well, I think it'd be great to get that title fight for Jimmy. Obviously, I trust that you're deep in the game, and so I don't know how credible the sources you're talking
Wow. Are you questioning my sources, Audie? Is that what's happening here?
No, but you know what? Even when you confirm stuff with our clients, I'm like, where do you get that information from? But
it's always right. It's always right. Except if it's a fake Twitter account, which got you last week, but we won't talk about that.
Fake news. Hashtag fake news, right? But what I would say is, obviously, if the UFC decides to match Jones versus DC up, I mean, that's an understandable matchup. And I think for Jimmy, he has his eyes set on Shogun next if he doesn't get the DC fight. So I think there's been some talks about that behind the scenes. So we'll see. Ultimately, kind of it all shakes out and what really does happen. But it's an interesting time in the light heavyweight division, and Jimmy Manuel right now is on a roll. So I'm excited for his future. What
interests you more? What do you want to see happen? Tony Ferguson versus Khabib finally, or Tony Ferguson versus Nate Diaz? I've heard him talk about Nate a lot on many different outlets, including this one. What do you like better for Tony at this point?
Look, I think for Tony, he wants what was originally scheduled for him, which is a chance to fight for the interim title. And I think that, Khabib was such a great matchup because there was a lot of competitive spirit going back and forth between those two. And then obviously it was supposed to happen once before and it didn't happen. So there was this build up in fan interest to want to see those two go at it and compete. And unfortunately what happened to Khabib, was serious and canceled the fight the night before. And the way it all just played out was just so anticlimactic and disappointing and disheartening. So, on one end, you say, okay, well, that matchup would be great. But, the history of what has happened, whether it's due to injury or what have you, has really left, obviously, some doubt, particularly in Tony. He doesn't want to just go through canceling all that money, and energy, and then all of a sudden that fight doesn't happen again. So the Nate Diaz fight interests him. And quite frankly, like Nate's sitting on the sidelines, and you got to get Conor excited. So if you want Conor to be excited about you, you got to go in there and fight, if you want to fight him in the future. So the thing is Nate, Tony for the interim title, that creates narrative. And so if Nate really thinks he's worthy of it, he A, gets to fight for a title, and B, essentially, if he thinks he's worthy of it, one of those two guys has to come out victorious, and both of them want to make Conor excited if they want to fight him. That's kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, right?
Right.
If this thing happens, with Floyd, you got to get Conor excited to get back in there with you. That's just the reality of it, right? So I think from a opportunity standpoint, Nate would be foolish not to consider taking Tony on an interim title fight. And obviously, it'd be great if Khabib stepped up and there were some assurances, but to wait till September doesn't interest Tony. I can tell you that right now. He wants to fight this summer, and he wants to get back in there. I mean, he's been sitting and being left kind of hanging the way he was. He's just ready to get back in there.
Well, and have they offered that fight?
No, but I can tell you that that's something that I know Tony's very keen on continuing to campaign for.
Okay.
So, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, from what I understand, Nate doesn't necessarily engage like he probably should, or, make some demands that essentially breaks down conversations too quickly. So, and I don't know who his representation is, but, I could tell you that would be a great matchup. As a fan, I'd love to see Nate versus Tony Ferguson. I think the fans would want to see that. There'd definitely be fireworks that night if those two are matched up.
And just quickly, what's more likely to happen, Bisping versus GSP or Bisping versus Romero?
Bisping versus GSP. That's happening.
Okay.
All
right.
Everything I've heard, even as just yesterday, from BSP's camp, is that it's happening. So I was talking to Mike, you know, that's something that's still there. He's in Thailand right now filming a movie. We had already kind of anticipated that fight wasn't going to happen till late fall, early winter. So he's been, you know, working on his post-athletic identity endeavors, which include acting, you know? But I mean, it's just like everything else. You know, it happens when the ink dries and they show up fight night. That's just the way this game works.
Scale of 1 to 10, what are the chances Floyd versus Conor happens?
Again, if I were to give you the same analogy as football, I could tell you 5, but I still don't know until it happens.
But we're on the 50-yard line.
I mean, you could say that.
Oh.
And you're saying it's 50-50.
That's not bad. I mean, it's better than 10 and 90.
Sure.
Okay. Fair enough. This was fun. Thank you, Audie.
Well, you forgot about one more title fight
to
discuss.
Which one?
Lorenz Larkin.
Lorenz Larkin is fighting June 24th at Madison Square Garden. Lorenz, we've got Megan Anderson. Right. We've got a lot going on. Rico Verhoeven coming back. There's so much.
Coming back.
Well, you got any news about Lorenz for us?
So he's going to win the Bellator title.
Okay.
First fight with the organization. That's the news. And, you know, look, I'm not a betting man, but I'm very bullish on that idea. I'm excited for him to go out there and show what he's made of, and he's really excited to showcase his skills.
Keep up all the great work. You guys are doing great things. Your stable continues to grow day by day, and let's do this again. Not maybe in a year or so, maybe 2 or so months before the fight, before it gets done. You know, you come on, you announce it to the world. It would be fun. I think it would be nice.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me on, and it's an honor to work with all these guys for sure. You know, and we'll continue to pound the pavement, so to speak.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Audie. All the best.
All right, Ariel. Thanks, man. All right.
Like I said, there are many. I mean, there's tons of other guys that we could talk about: Verhoeven, Megan Anderson, Lorenz Larkin, Rick Story. He's got quite the stable. Good to get an update on the whole situation with Audie Attar.